Which teams had the best and worst driver lineups on the F1 24 grid? Let's find out. With no drivers changing over the winter break for the first time in Formula 1 history, we have ranked the existing lineups on the grid. Aside from Danny Ricciardo replacing Nick De Vries, the grid that starts the 24 season is the same that ended the 23, which gives us a good chance to reflect on the new order. One rookie exceeded all expectations, while another did just enough to earn a second season. There were surprises amongst the experienced drivers too. So how does that tip the balance of quality across the 10 driver lineups in F1? If one thing is for certain, it's that F1 drivers in 24 will be hungrier than ever to claim the top spot. The coming season promises on-track action in abundance. Will McLaren, Mercedes or Ferrari catch the indomitable Red Bulls? Can anyone stop Max Verstappen? Well, there's something to be said for consistency when overcoming a challenging opponent, and that features heavily in the F1 paddock in 24. We have ranked each driver pairing on their combined strengths to see who, in our opinion, is the best. In at number 10, Stake F1, Valtteri Bottas and Zhou Guanyu. The Bottas-Guanyu partnership is entering its third season in 24 at the newly renamed Stake team, but it has slipped to the very bottom of the pile in our estimations. Alfa Romeo's departure from the team means there's plenty of change at Sauber in 24 as well. Newly appointed team principal Alessandro Alunni-Bravi will oversee the team's first ever UK launch event to reveal its new identity in the interim before it becomes Audi. Although 23 wasn't the campaign they'd hoped for, both Bottas and Guanyu scored a handful of points on separate occasions, and as the team starts to galvanise ahead of 26, an upturning performance isn't out of the question for 24. To say 23 was a year to forget for the Alfa Romeo team would perhaps be overdoing it, as in truth be told it has already been pretty much forgotten. The team seems stuck in a holding pattern waiting for Audi to arrive, and neither driver excelled last time out. Valtteri Bottas is for sure a talented driver, but it's been a long time since he troubled the upper echelons of the grid, and points for Zhou Guanyu has really been hard to come by in the last 2 years. Moving on to Haas at number 9, Kevin Magnussen and Nico Hülkenberg. The drive to survive sensations that are Haas have been the final piece of the jigsaw in F24. However, they have been the ultra-consistent lineup of Kevin Magnussen and Nico Hülkenberg, and they have been retained for 23. It may not have been the strongest season for the drivers or the team, but knowing the drivers can perform week in and week out is half the battle, and in the lower reaches of the field, it becomes invaluable. The Haas team will aim to use that to their advantage as they eye more points more often in 24. Nico Hülkenberg can feel a little hard done by that he is this low down in the order, but truth be told, the performances of Kevin Magnussen in 23 have dragged the Haas team down to 9th. The German driver has excelled in qualifying before the Haas car let him down in the race, but Magnussen could not find the form on either Saturday or Sunday and faced questions about his seat. With both over the age of 30, they are unlikely to improve as much as some of the others on this list. Next up at number 8, Williams, Alex Albon and Logan Sargeant. Williams' 24 driver lineup will stay the same as last year, much like every other team on the grid, and with good reason. In 23, the team recorded its best season since 2017, propelling them from last in the Constructors in 22 to regularly troubling the midfield towards the end of the year. Alex Albon's stock rose considerably in 23, scoring all but one of the team's 28 points. He'll be hungry for more in 24, and if Williams' development continues at this current rate, it could even begin challenging for the top 5s or maybe even a podium. Logan Sargeant, on the other hand, will have to make sure that he makes the most of his second season and scores points on a more regular basis. Sargeant most likely would come last on this ranking if it wasn't done by individuals, but Alex Albon was so good in 23 that he has pulled Williams up to 8th. In a car that finally had a bit of pace, especially on the straights, Alex Albon recorded a P13 finish, Williams' best since 19. In saying that, his performances even reportedly put him on the radar of Ferrari, such as the link shows how well the British Thai driver is doing. Sargeant, meanwhile, struggled in his rookie year and needs a big step up in performance if he is to last beyond 2024. Moving swiftly on, and multiple name changes are coming, but AlphaTauri, Daniel Ricciardo and Yuki Tsunoda. There's a lot of change at AlphaTauri, not to mention just their name, but firstly, their name has changed now to Visa Cash App RB. Similarly, Franz Tost left his long-standing team principal post to make way for incoming Laurent Mekies. The 24 drivers, in fact, will be the only changes that are the least of the 24 season. Although the lineup has changed from its initial 23 pairing, Yuki Tsunoda and Danny Ricciardo finished the 23 season and will start the 24. With strong points hauls from both drivers last season, the team will be hoping to make progress up the grid. Danny Ric's arrival has helped push AlphaTauri up one spot, but for now they are still in the lower half with questions remaining about both drivers. For Ricciardo, the question is how much of the old Danny Ric is still in there, having had a good few years out of the sport since we last saw the best of him. For Yuki Tsunoda, the question is, what is his ceiling after a good, if not quite great, 2 years in the sport so far? Moving swiftly on to Alpine, Pierre Gasly and Esteban Ocon. The all-French lineup of Pierre Gasly and Esteban Ocon will remain the same, with this team moving up to a mid-position table. A position apiece for Gasly and Ocon at Zandvoort and Monaco respectively showed that a jump up the field isn't an impossible task, but there's a long road ahead for the Alpine squad in 24. Two very skilled drivers on their day, but we just haven't seen enough of them in 23. Pierre Gasly had the highlights, including a podium in Zandvoort and beating Esteban Ocon over the course of the year, but neither are considered to be in line with the upper echelons of the grid. They are then perhaps representative of their team as a whole, who find themselves in no man's land. Too good to be near the bottom, but not good enough to crack the top half. And speaking of the top half, number 5, Aston Martin, Fernando Alonso and Lance Stroll. Aston Martin's 24 F1 drivers are also continuing for another season. They will hope to replicate the first half of the 23 season and not the second half. Having caused the upset of the season in the early rounds, the team experienced a drop in performance over the season's middle stint before a resurgence in the latter races re-energized the drivers and the entire outfit. For many, Alonso was the star of the show at the start of the season, and a memorable duel with Perez at Sao Paulo will also give Aston Martin fans cause for optimism in 24. Meanwhile, Lance will be hoping to start on a stronger foot in 23 and avoid any cycling-related injuries prior to the start in Bahrain. For all the criticism Lance Stroll is subjected to, he is not the worst paid driver we have ever seen. He's not the best either. But lest we forget that he has recorded a pole position, 3 podiums in his career, but the 23 season was a year with many questions, rightly or wrongly, raised about his commitment to F1. The same questions were not asked of Fernando Alonso, who was reborn in the Aston Martin car. Even at the age of 42, the 2-time world champion has proven he is good as any other title winner on the grid. Okay, we move on to McLaren at number 4, Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri. As the F1 driver with the second strongest latter half of the 23 season, Lando Norris carries over significant momentum into 2024. If we didn't think that the elusive first win was on the horizon for the Brit already, a whopping 6 second-place finishes from 11 races would suggest that it is imminent, and what is a better opportunity than the start of a new season. Likewise, rookie sensation Piastri's sprint performances in Belgium and Qatar hint at big things to come in 24. This is a duo that has the potential to skyrocket to the top of this year's orders, with Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri being 2 of the youngest drivers on the grid. For Lando Norris, 23 was a turning point when he managed to consistently score podiums and finished a joint career best of 6th in the standings. Oscar Piastri, meanwhile, suggested he had been in the driving for F1 for years, with a rookie season arguably not surpassed since Lewis Hamilton in 07. The future is bright. The future is papaya. Moving on to number 3, Mercedes, Lewis Hamilton and George Russell. Mercedes, having finished best of the rest in 24, both driver standings with Hamilton and in the constructors, will be looking to make that jump from the top of the midfield to challenging the Red Bulls out in front. 7-time champion Hamilton enters his 18th season in F1, but having finished 3rd in the last year's standings, his pace is as strong as ever. Russell, on the other hand, will be hoping to bounce back after one of his less fruitful seasons. Lewis Hamilton reaffirmed his dominance in the Mercedes team in 23 after comfortably beating George Russell on points, but it still is not race-winning performances that we are used to seeing from the 7-time world champion. There were flashes of brilliance, including an excellent pole in Hungary, and there is little doubt that should Hamilton be given a car that he is comfortable with once again, that he will once again be competing with the best. For Russell, it is hard to know where he fits on the list of the best in the grid, and with just 1 win to his name in a lackluster career so far, and especially against his self-proclaimed standards in 2023, it can't be said that it'd be worse than the W14 has been so far. We now move on to number 2, and Ferrari, Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz. The Scarlet Cars hold the enviable accolade of being the only team to beat Red Bull last year. An incredible victory at Singapore for Carlos Sainz gave a lot of fans hope that the tides were turning in favour of the chasing pack, only to be quashed by a string of victories for the Flying Dutchman. Similarly, Charles Leclerc's ever-present one-lap pace yielded 5 pole positions that he was ultimately unable to convert. With solid foundations in place and a second season at the helm for Frederic Vasseur, the prancing horse is eyeing an upset in 24. It is at Ferrari where you will find the most equally talented pairing, with Charles Leclerc only marginally ahead of Carlos Sainz at the moment. It was the Spaniard who picked up the team's only win in 23 and indeed the only non-Red Bull victory in what many will say was the race of his career to this point. Leclerc meanwhile seems like a firework whose fuse keeps going out before liftoff. Everyone knows there is a talent in there, but the Monegasque just needs to avoid the crashes and misfortune that has derailed his career so far. Hopefully Charles can find some luck from somewhere. Okay, number 1, and it's quite obvious really, Red Bull, Max Verstappen and Sergio Perez. The ever-moving target in F1 in relentless improvement and perfection, which means Red Bull has a tough ask in 24. During the 23 season, Max Verstappen and the team enjoyed the most dominant period in the sport's history. That's a difficult act to follow, but undoubtedly they will be doing their best to try and make that happen. After a winter reset, Sergio Perez completes this unchanged lineup and will also be hoping to repeat his early 23 form in a bid to stop Verstappen from romping to a 4th straight title. This F1 driver combination is the team to beat in 24. Now, regardless of the complaints made about Sergio Perez, Max Verstappen's current level is too high for Red Bull not to top this list. The Dutchman broke just about every record going last season and scored enough points to win the Constructors' Championship by himself. The 26-year-old is in that rare form where he can do no wrong and yet everything looks so effortless, to the point that his rivals know that it's not just the Red Bull that they need to beat, but a generational talent as well. For Perez, he is in an able deputy position to Verstappen in 23, and he highlights his weaknesses in quali. The Mexican had the ability and the car to recover last year, but that may not be the case when the rivals close the gap. And those are the best and worst driver lineups in 24. Which driver partnerships do you think are the best and worst? Who is the number 1 driver at each team? Which surprises are you looking for in the coming season? Let us know what you think in the comments, and remember to like, comment, share and subscribe. Keep the pedal to the metal, and I'll catch you in the next video.